Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Don't Pee on My Leg and Tell Me It's Raining. On today's show, we have North Carolina State Representative Dennis Riddell. Now, I've known Dennis for years. As a kid, I was in 4-H with his kids, and one of his sons even came to my 11th birthday party. Which is all to say that while I'm about to hold Dennis accountable for deceiving his constituents, I can tell you firsthand he's authentically a nice guy. Lately, Dennis has been running around the county with these big poster board signs. Now, I don't know the exact origin of these signs, but I assume they were made by an unpaid intern in Raleigh and handed out to Republican politicians to take home and show off to their constituents. Which is exactly what Dennis is doing. Specifically, he's trying to convince voters that North Carolina students and teachers have benefited from 15 years of Republican control. If cherry-picking data was an Olympic sport, Dennis Riddell would be Michael Phelps. Let's break it down. Dennis's first chart shows an overview of our state budget. As you can see, 58% of our state budget goes to education, making it our largest category. Now, this is true. Education really does make up the largest portion of our state budget, and based on this chart alone, a reasonable person could conclude that Republicans are doing a great job funding public education in North Carolina. But wait, there's more. The first thing Dennis is leaving out is that under this budget, North Carolina ranks 4th lowest in per-pupil spending out of all 50 states, and second to last in funding public education relative to the state's wealth. In other words, despite controlling the 11th richest state in the nation, Republicans are funding North Carolina schools as if we were the second poorest state.
That's wild.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's nuts. Dennis is also leaving out the fact that education spending is a broad category that includes not just K-12 public schools, but also charter schools, the UNC system, the community college system, and of course, the private school voucher scheme. If we're only talking about funding for K-12 public education, Dennis's shiny 58% drops 20 points to a much less impressive 38%. Let's also note that Dennis is focusing on just one budget from one fiscal period. If we zoom out, we can see that education's share of overall state spending has been declining since the 1970s. To be clear, both parties have historically fallen short on funding our public schools. However, for the past 15 years, Republicans have had near total control of our state government, and on their watch, funding for public education has gone from poor to catastrophic. So that's chart number 1. Now let's talk about chart number 2. This chart shows how much money North Carolina spent annually on K-12 education between 2005 and 2024. The blue dots represent years when Democrats were in power, while the red dots represent years when Republicans were in power. A reasonable person might look at this chart and think that Raleigh Republicans are working really hard to fund our public schools. And if our schools are failing, it must be because teachers and administrators are financially inept and wasting all the taxpayer money we're throwing at them. And this is exactly what Dennis and his Republican colleagues in Raleigh want you to think. Here's the truth. While K-12 education has been declining as a share of the overall state budget, the actual dollars spent on K-12 education has been increasing for decades. Dennis intentionally starts his graph in 2005, ignoring the funding increases under Democrats before that. Why start in 2005? Because it's right before the Great Recession, which caused a huge drop in education funding due to the largest financial crisis since the Great Depression. When we adjust for inflation, we find that North Carolina actually spends less money per pupil today than we did in 2005. And Dennis knows this. He's a smart guy. But the truth won't help him stay in power, so he has to create a narrative that will. Despite what they may tell you, Dennis and his fellow Republicans in Raleigh do not value public education. And the proof is in the numbers. 15 years of Republican control have left our students and teachers struggling to do more with less. Meanwhile, in this same budget, Dennis and his colleagues voted to use taxpayer dollars to cover private school tuition for millionaires. Now, why doesn't he have a chart for that? Special thanks to Haddon Lagarde for conducting research for this video. Thanks for watching the Hometown Holler. Quinn and I are just two guys with day jobs, and these videos take a lot of time and effort. We're talking research, writing, recording, editing. Our patrons make all of this possible. And if you find our work valuable, we'd love for you to become a friend of the Holler at www.patreon.com/the Hometown Holler. Together, we can build a better North Carolina, one conversation at a time.